I'm Barry Shaw, and welcome to The View from Israel. And football fans, stay tuned because this show is for you. As most of you know, the 2018-2019 season is reaching its climax, and we're into the Champions League semi-final stage. We had the last round, which was between, of course, Liverpool and Barcelona, and also Spurs and Ajax. Now, myself being a Manchester City fan, I'm loath to use the word united, but in this show we have two special guests, and we'll be talking about one issue which unites both Ajax as a football club and its supporters and Spurs. But first, I'm very happy to say we have two very special guests on the show today. From London, we have Daniel Wynn. Hi, Daniel.
Hi there, Barry.
Very good. And from Amsterdam, we have Gideon Coronel. Gideon, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Okay, let's begin by talking about the last game. Took place in White Hart Lane. Daniel, were you at the game?
I was working at the game. For the first half an hour, it was a masterclass of passing football by Ajax. They were probably the best team I've seen for many years in that opening half an hour, and I've seen Barcelona this season as well. But then when Jan Vertonghen got injured, our formation changed and our game changed a little bit as well. To only end the game 1-0 down, I was very happy with that. I would have taken that in the first half an hour. And it's all set up nicely for the second leg. I'm nervous, but we have players back. Sissoko will be back, Heung-min Son will be back, and maybe Harry Kane will be available on the bench as well. But Ajax are a superb side, many, many talented players, and I can't help but being a little nervous as well.
Yeah, I certainly felt that first game you were very deprived at the front by both having Kane injured and Son suspended. And I think beyond those two, you didn't have any strikers that were effective at all. I have to agree with you, Daniel, what you said about Ajax being a special side. I want to tell you, I heard on TalkSport that Ajax was referred to as a young Barcelona. Gideon, I understand you came over for the game as well.
I did, yeah. Very last minute, but I was there, yeah.
What was your impression of this brand new White Hart Lane stadium that Spurs have built?
Very, very impressive. Especially the sound in the stadium when they all started to sing. I didn't join them in singing, but it was impressive.
Yeah, okay. The atmosphere must have been great. So how happy were you with the game?
Well, as always, I'm a bit nervous for big games, but I think everything Daniel said was spot on. I'm not much to add to it. I think first 30 minutes, Ajax was great. And afterwards, it became a bit more difficult. I think Pochettino used the wrong strategy to start with. But for the next game, I'm pretty sure that he won't start with 5 in the back. And then it will be a very difficult game for Ajax to go through. But we have the better chance.
You have that one goal advantage, away goal advantage. That could be critical in the return game. So now, Daniel, tell the viewers what your personal and professional connections are with Spurs.
So, like most football fans, I got it through my father. My father was born in Belgium. In fact, his parents were born in Amsterdam. When the diamond industry in Amsterdam finished, they moved over to Antwerp. When my father was born, he left Antwerp in 1940 during the war and came to London. They settled in Stamford Hill, which is an ultra Jewish area just about 2 minutes from Tottenham. And on a weekend, he would go down to see Tottenham play, and he gave me the Spurs helmet. And that's really how it all started for me. I've been going since 1975, when I was 5 years old, and I now work at the club as well. I'm their commentator, and you can cut me, and I'm my Spurs throughout. Very aware of the Jewish connection in Amsterdam as well. I've been to the Ajax stadium on 2 or 3 occasions. It's an incredible place from a Tottenham perspective. Yeah, my background is through my father. I work there now. I've worked there for 18 years. I've been a season ticket holder since the age of 5. It's a massive part of my.
I understand. I understand your when you talk about being a commentator. This is actually a pretty unique job of commentating. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I've
Who
actually
are you
held 2
commentating
commentary
to?
positions at Tottenham. Yeah, so for the last 17 years, I was a commentator on Spurs TV, covering every game the first team played. That role stopped this season, and I'm now doing the commentary for blind supporters inside the ground. So they are able to experience the atmosphere of going to see Tottenham play. And with an audio descriptive commentary, we paint a picture of what's in front of them. So they really get the full experience.
Wow, that's amazing. So they not only get the atmosphere, but they're really kept up to speed with what's happening on the pitch. That's wonderful. I understand you have some connection with the supporters club.
Yeah, so for 6 years, I was chairman of the Supporters Trust, which is a supporters organisation, which is a link between clubs, board of directors, and the supporters. We represented their interest. And I'm also a trustee, one of the club's charities, Tottenham Tribute Trust, which put players in later years who didn't earn the money that players earn for themselves in different levels of financial difficulty. As a registered UK charity, we're able to provide a care and respect where necessary to just make their latter years a bit easier for.
Okay, excellent. Gideon, I understand you've not only got personal connections with Ajax, but also family, family connections with Ajax. Tell us about that, please.
Well, a bit similar to Daniel. I was also my father was the one who took me to Ajax when I was 5 years old, and he always went with his father and his brother to the Ajax games ever since he was 5 years old. So it's a family thing in that way. But also when I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old, not even younger, it was in '87. My uncle, so my father's brother, joined the board of Ajax from '89 till '98.
What was his name?
A very successful period for Ajax. Not really because of him, but it was a good time for him to be on the board. And then he came back as a chairman of the club in 2011. No, 2008. Sorry, from 2008 till 2011. So that's the family connection. I've played myself for the amateur team for 3 years in the first team, and then I started to play in a more recreational level as of today. So not as of today, but until I'm still a member of the team. I don't play as much anymore, but I'm still a member of the amateur club.
So you can see, our viewers can see that we have two guys here that are really closely connected to the two teams. So Daniel, I spoke before about the issue that, in a sense, connects the two clubs, unites both Spurs and Ajax, and this is the historic, you want to call that, and even a contemporary Jewish connection between the club. Tell us something about how this Jewish connection was involved with Tottenham Hotspurs, with Spurs. How did it start? How did it develop?
So going back many years, I guess after the Second World War, the area of Tottenham was very heavily populated by Jewish people. Stamford Hill remains to this day a very highly concentrated area of Orthodox, the Hasidic community, and that's, as I said, about 2-3 minute walk from Tottenham Stadium. As a result of that, Tottenham became known as a Jewish club due to the population and the supporters. That turned around quite a hostile situation in the early 1970s. Some of the clubs that we played against called Tottenham the Yids in a nasty way, in a derogatory way. The Spurs fans thought, hold on a minute, we're going to use this as a positive. So we turned the aggression, the negativity around into a positive, and we started calling ourselves Yids. There was regularly Israeli flags at our games. So we really started as something negative. Spurs fans turned into a term of endearment, almost a badge of honour or a call to arms, whereby Spurs fans associated ourselves with that word. And it's only using a when Spurs fans call it, we sing the Yid Army, and that's only positive, no negativity at all. I'm sure we'll come on to it a bit in a few moments.
Aha. Gideon, from your perspective over there in Amsterdam, I guess the Jewish connection, the history, was started probably before the Second World War because of the location of the ground in a Jewish area. But tell us a bit about the history of that period and also post Second World War, obviously with the Germans having occupied Holland.
Yes. Well, exactly, because the Holocaust has a big impact in the Jewish community in Amsterdam. Before 1940, we had a large Jewish community. I think 140,000 Jews living in Holland, and the majority of them living in Amsterdam. And the area where the former stadium was located in the east of Amsterdam, indeed used to be the neighborhood where a lot of the Jewish people live. And similar to what Daniel just said, the away fans were saying that they were going to the Jews when they played Ajax. I wasn't there, obviously, but I'm not sure whether they meant it negatively. But in the same way as the Spurs fans did, the Ajax fans made it a positive thing, called themselves the Jews as a nickname. I think they're proud of it, but not because of the religion, but just because it's just a name for them, I believe. And they've been calling themselves that more and more after the war, but it really started to go to another level, to the next level in the 90s, when you saw the Israeli flags and they were really singing songs. At some point, they were singing Hava Nagila Hava during the games. So it really became a big thing for the fans. They identified themselves as Jews, even though I'm convinced they don't know much about Judaism or the political situation in the Middle East. But it's not more than a nickname to them. The negative reactions that it provoked from the away fans are a consequence that I don't think they thought of when they decided to take this nickname. But that's something that happened, and that is still a big thing here in Holland today.
You know, Daniel, Gideon was mentioning here the effect of rival supporters breaking into anti-Semitism. I perfectly understand what Gideon was saying, and you have said that really you were chanting Jewish expressions or Hebrew expressions, and even waving the Star of David as a not as a racist thing, but as a proud identification with the history of the club. But I don't know if you read it, but Daniel Finkelstein, the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, wrote an article in the Times last week, in which he was talked from his perspective as a Jewish Arsenal supporter, and how uncomfortable it was for him if he was coming to White Hart Lane and being in the crowd of Arsenal supporters and hearing the horrible anti-Semitic racist chants from the Arsenal supporters. And in the article, though, he was pleading actually with the Spurs and the Spurs fans to tone down their the waving of the flag, or singing about the Spurs being the Yid's army, which, as you said, and I agree with you, was done as a matter of personal identification or identification with the club. Now Gideon is saying the same, that in fact he has over there the issue of rival clubs who break into anti-Semitic chants, which obviously affects the atmosphere of the football club. And I suppose it comes down to this question at the end of the day. Should a club like Spurs or even Ajax tone down their pride in the history and identification of the club to appease anti-Semites and to keep a healthier atmosphere, if you want to call it that, or keep up with their
there's many
identity.
points. There's many
Yeah, go
points
ahead.
that you raised there. It's not a club thing first and foremost; it's a society thing, and also as a point of law. And it's been proven that Spurs as a club have gone to a QC in the UK to get a legal opinion. And it boils down to context and intent. When Spurs fans think that stuff, when Spurs fans associate themselves in the context and confines of the football stadium when supporting their football team, it's absolutely fine. There's no malicious intent. There's no idea to cause offence. It's purely supporting the football team. When other football supporters use it, or if it's used in the street, used negatively, and it's used as a term that is offensive, and that's where the problem lies. So it's an education in terms of the other supporters. As Gideon himself said, many Spurs fans don't understand what it fully means, don't understand the background, don't understand the politics in the Middle East. It's nothing to do with it. It's a nickname in the same way. If you walk into a gay bar in London, the gay community, the homosexual community will use words like puff, queer, gay, which I, as a straight, wouldn't ever use because it's offensive. In the same way, if you walk into a predominantly black pub or a black restaurant, bar, etc., in an environment, they use the nigger word, they use other offensive terms, which they use as a way of embracing each other, but it's negative and it's used by other people. The content is exactly the same. So it's not a Tottenham Hotspur problem, it's a society problem used negatively.
Yeah. Gideon, I understand that over there with Ajax, one of the things that you suffer from, both at away games and at home games especially, is some rival fans who are chanting things like Hamas, Juden, alle het gas, Hamas, Jews to the gas, and also rival supporters giving Nazi salutes. Do you think that this negative phenomenon would go away even if Ajax fans weren't waving the Star of David flags, for instance? Would it still be there?
There's only one way to find out, and I think it's the best way the best effort would be to ask the Ajax fans to stop doing it. Not that it justifies the reactions by the rival clubs, not at all, but let's try it that way. And that's what my uncle, amongst others, has tried in the 15 years ago. Didn't really succeed because it's difficult to really take it away from the fans. But it's already less now than it used to be 10 or 15 years ago. There's less Israeli flags, but it's still there. And as you said, the reactions by the rivalry fans is definitely still there. So I totally agree with you. There's only one way to find out whether it will help, and that's by stopping. The Ajax fans should stop identifying themselves, or at least expressing themselves as Jews.
Well, I want to tell you, both of you really, from an Israeli perspective, I want to tell you that sometimes you think that by appeasing the enemy, or the racist in this case, it's going to stop the racist becoming racist. And you can even leave your Star of David flags at home and your chants at home, but I think you'll still find that you will still be identified as historically a club that was supported by Jews, not only Jews, of course, but I think the thing would be there. I think education, like Daniel said, it's a social thing, is very important. And I want to tell you, the viewers, that just a few days ago, on Holocaust Day, there was a march which is called, it happens every year, called March of the Living, which retraces the death march of the surviving Jews of Auschwitz, where the Nazis marched them to Birkenau concentration camps. Thousands this year participated in that march from Auschwitz, and including both players and the management of Chelsea Football Club. I would like to see perhaps next year some of the players and the management of both Spurs and Ajax and certainly some of the rival clubs, those who are guilty of Nazi chants, from actually setting an example by participating in next year's March of the Living on Holocaust Day 2020. I think that would be acting as role models of that, might set example for the people in the crowd. That's on that issue.
Barry,
So let's end on,
yeah,
carry on, go
yeah,
ahead.
Barry. So in 2007, when Tottenham played in Tel Aviv, I was part of an official party that went to Yad Vashem. The
Yep.
directors went, and we were there with some supporters for the entire morning. Some of the board of directors were there as well, as I said, and a very moving experience. So the Tottenham hierarchy are fully aware of the background and everything associated with it. They do take it seriously. The reason Chelsea in the march is basically because there's a fundamental problem within Chelsea supporters, not so much the club, but the supporters of anti-Semitic content, and they're trying their best to turn that around.
Yeah, Gidon, do you want to come in with that?
I didn't catch everything Daniel said, but I know that I think I agree with you 100%. It would be even better not to send the players and the staff, but the rival fans, the ones who are guilty of chanting whatever it is that they are saying, because I think those are the people you have to educate, not as much the players or the management. But yeah, I really like the idea, and I hope it will be used. I know that in Holland they also did the Hague, one of the rival clubs. Fans were also participating in one of the March of the Livings.
Very good, very good. And further to what Daniel said, if Maccabi Tel Aviv and maybe even Maccabi Netanya, my hometown, make it into the Champions League next season and have the luck or misfortune to be drawn against Spurs or Ajax, and perhaps in the game over here in Israel, maybe some of the Ajax players and the management would go and visit, as Daniel said, Yad Vashem, basically simply because this image, I think, would get back to the fans, not just of the clubs, but of the other clubs also, and act as a symbol.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's end up on a brighter note, if you call it a brighter note, because we're recording this. This is going to go out just a few days before the return game between when Spurs have to travel to your Ajax stadium. So, Daniel, tell us, how do you anticipate this game panning out? You know, you've got to make up a 1-goal deficit here.
We do. We can have different players available. Sissoko will be starting. I would have thought only Son's back from suspension. I think, as Gideon said, Mauricio Pochettino won't start with 3 centre-halves or 5 at the back. It'd be, a traditional 4 at the back. So we have to go to Ajax to attack. We have to get at least 1 goal, 2 if we're going to qualify. And you can't help but respect Ajax. They have talented players, and the goalkeeper right through to the forward line. So it's a huge task. There are no illusions the size of the task that's ahead of us on Wednesday night, but it's something that we can overcome. Nothing but respect Ajax, and if we do lose, then sincerely hope Ajax beat us winner in the final. So we're going to give it our best shot. I mean, it's a game on the.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, Gideon, one thing I have to say in Daniel's defense was that the planning of the Dutch season worked out better for Ajax than the planning of the Premier League table, because Premier League teams have been playing like 2 times a week, and Ajax had a week's rest before that game at White Hart Lane. Are they playing this weekend, and how do you see the next game going?
They're playing the cup final on Sunday.
Oh wow!
So that is a game.
All right.
I understand that the Spurs fans weren't happy that Ajax was a week off, but I like the response that the manager of Ajax gave. He said, maybe it's not fair that Ajax had the weekend off, but maybe it's also not fair that Spurs gets 200 million of euros for the broadcasting the games on TV, and Ajax gets 10 million. So there's also a bit more budget to buy more good players and be capable to play 2 games a week. So not sure whether that should be an excuse, but it definitely helped, or maybe it didn't, but I think it did. And for the next game, as Daniel said, it's definitely Spurs still has a chance. They have a lot of players who can score a goal, and if they score early, then it will be a really tight game. Even if they don't score early and it stays 0-0 for a long time, then a lot can happen. So it will be really interesting, and I obviously hope that Ajax will go through, and otherwise, at least there's one Jewish club in the final.
Well, look, I want to tell you, this is going to be recorded. It's going to be on YouTube before this second game. But I'm going to be really cruel here. I'm going to put you guys on the spot. I'm going to ask you both, first starting with you, Gideon, make a prediction. Who's going to go through to meet Barcelona in the final? Because I cannot see Liverpool pulling back a 3-goal deficit against Barcelona. So who's going to be playing Barcelona in the final? Start with you, Gideon.
Ajax.
You know what the score is going to be in the next game?
3-1.
To who? To Ajax? Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Daniel, how do you respond to that?
I won't be able to walk down Tottenham High Road into the next game if I say that Ajax are going to win. So I think we're going to win 2-1. I think it's a case of my heart says one thing, my head says another. So my heart says 2-1, my head, I'll leave that there.
Your heart says 2-1 to Spurs, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
So
all right.
The connection. My heart says 2-1 to Tottenham. My head says something maybe different.
All right, you're playing it safe. Okay, that's in the can. It's recorded. This video will be coming out on YouTube and other social media outlets. First of all, I want to say thank you very much both to Daniel and to Gideon. You've been spectacular guests on the show. Thank you, Daniel in London.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gideon in Amsterdam.
Thank you.
And I hope you enjoyed the show. Makes a light change, and I hope you found it for this link here, which connected Israel to Amsterdam to London via Stockholm, Sweden. So thanks for joining me on The View from Israel, and Shalom from Israel.